Thank you, Ramchandra Prabhu. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to meet all the devotees today. We don't know when we will start traveling physically, but as Ramchandra Prabhu said, this virtual travel is actually, in one sense, it's a better opportunity to take darshan of the beautiful form of Sri Sri Radha Shamsundar, as well as to take darshan and take association of all the devotees. And we are halfway across the world. And for me, it's a Monday morning, and normally Monday mornings are very busy, and it's the start of the work day and the work week. But this is a very blissful start to the week. At least I get to see the devotees before I go to work, and I think it's a very auspicious way to start the week. So thank you very much. And I did not know, Ramchandra Prabhu, that you yourself were actually in New Vrindavan, and that's the amazing thing. We can be
Uh,
anywhere, and we can still be connected, actually. Mm.
Singapore.
So thank you to devotees from all over the world, and if you are anywhere in the US, in many parts of US too. Um, Time is of the essence, so I want to offer my obeisances to the spiritual masters. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? It is such a tradition in our Vaishnava culture that as soon as we can come together, we put Krishna in the center. And you will realize that before we can speak anything on any topic related to spiritual life, we always start by invoking the blessings of our spiritual masters. And we start invoking the blessings of all the spiritual masters who come from the line that is coming directly from Krishna himself. This is the entire mood of spiritual and devotional life, is that one cannot even move an inch without the blessings of the devotees. And when we surrender to a particular devotee and we become committed to a particular devotee who's very advanced and who can show us the way to spiritual life, then that relationship becomes the spiritual master and the disciple relationship. Today's topic is a very interesting topic, and it's also a very practical topic because it's talking about trying to understand the mood of the spiritual master, and at the same time, apart from understanding the mood of the spiritual master, how do we actually plug into that mood? It's a very nice point. Plugging into the mood means we have to understand, first of all, two things. Who is the spiritual master and what is his mood? That is a very important point. There are so many wonderful ways to describe this topic, and Srila Prabhupada spoke extensively on this. But many ways, it is also very important to realize that spiritual life is actually, there is nothing fancy to spiritual life. Spiritual life, in many ways, is very commonsensical. Every day, whether we realize it or not, we are always at some point or another deferring to someone of higher authority. In the material world also, you'll find that until you defer to someone who knows more than you, it is actually very difficult to make progress in the area or the field that you have been tasked to perform a task. So no one can say that I have known everything and I've realized everything, even in this material world. Everyone always has a superior in this material world. And we don't see it as something very strange, and we don't see it as something very difficult to understand because it's an acceptable part of life. If in the material world we should also be turning to someone of higher stature, higher intelligence, then how much more we should in the spiritual world. So, this is a very important point that we should remember. The importance of taking shelter of one who knows more than you and who's known as the spiritual master in spiritual life cannot be overemphasized. This is a very important point. Sometimes people ask, how do we understand who is spiritual master and who is not? This is also another important question that comes even before we can even try to understand the mood of the spiritual master. There's a nice example given in the sastras, especially in this area known as the Hitopadesha. These are very simple stories, but they give very nice points to make us understand difficult concepts sometimes. There was this wise man, and he was accepted as a spiritual master of sorts in a village. And there was this lady who had a young child. I think there are many nice children in this congregation, and I heard an amazing kirtan just now. So, mothers and fathers, you may understand this. So at this point of time, this mother was a bit worried for her child, because she found out that her child was very addicted, to eating sweets. You all know how it is in ISKCON, right? When you have sweets, it's very difficult not to be addicted, actually. So this child he liked sweets so much and he couldn't stop eating it. So the mother was worried that if he continued eating sweets like this, it wouldn't be good for his health. So she was thinking, how do I actually get him to cure his addiction to the sweets? So she thought, there is one wise man in the village. So let me go and find this wise man. And if I find him, I can ask him to help my son find a way of curing his addiction to sweets. So what happens is she goes to the wise man and she says, my dear sir, can you please take this boy under your shelter? Can you please instruct him on how to come out of this addiction to the sweets? So this wise man looks at the boy and the mother, thinks carefully, and then he says, all right, I am ready to accept your boy, but just give me 2 weeks. Then you come back and let him stay in the ashram. So mother thought, all right, he must be busy. Maybe he has some appointment or something. So 2 weeks later, she brings the boy. And 2 weeks after that, she comes back. And when she comes back, she finds, lo and behold, the boy's addiction to sweets has been cured, actually. He was not interested in sweets at all. So she was very excited, very grateful, and she fell at the feet of the spiritual master, the wise man, and said, thank you so much, for making sure that the boy has been cured of the addiction to sweets. But she had a question. She said that, I want to know why you took 2 weeks. Was it because you had to prepare yourself? Was it because, you had to design a course for my boy? Why was it that you needed some time before you could sit down with my son? And the wise man said something very practical, but very sublime. He said, my dear mother, before I could cure his addiction to sweets, I realized that I had to cure my addiction to sweets. If I did not understand how I can cure my addiction to sweets, then how can I pass this experience and this knowledge to the boy? So I needed time myself to realize and understand how I can take myself out of this addiction. So this is a very simple point, but it informs us on the most basic qualification of a spiritual master. The spiritual master is one who not only speaks about the transcendental truth and who is Krishna, but the spiritual master is one who has seen and realized the absolute truth. This is very important. In the 4th chapter, 34th verse of Bhagavad Gita, which is a very seminal verse for all of us, if we are serious about spiritual life, we will study this verse. In 434 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna very nicely tells Arjuna, Tad vidhi pranipatena, pariprashnena sevaya, upadekshte shanti te jnanam. Oh, thank you, Prabhu. This is nice. Jnaninas tadva darshinaha. So this is the verse that we actually start with whenever we want to hear and understand our relationship with the spiritual master. Krishna says in 434 Bhagavad Gita that you just try to learn the truth. Just try to learn the truth. In other words, the purpose of approaching a spiritual master in spiritual life is to actually learn the absolute truth, is actually to learn about Krishna, to learn about what is actually life in Krishna consciousness. So it's very important for us to first to try and learn the truth. That is why we approach the spiritual master. This boy wanted to learn the truth of how to cure himself of the addiction of sweets. But the devotees, our aim in life is actually to learn how to render devotional service to Krishna. Let us be very clear about the goal of our life. We have so many dharmas, Bhagavatam says, We are husbands, we are wives, we have so many duties, we are children, we go to school, we have so many occupational duties. In the temple, we have so many services. But ultimately, what is our main dharma? In Bhagavatam, it is stated so nicely, Savai pumsam paro dharmo, yathor bhakti radok saje, ahaituki apratihata, yayatma suprasidti. Yayatma suprasidati means that we can only become satisfied in our heart if we understand that we have only one goal in life. That is the highest dharma of all of us. And that highest dharma is actually yathor bhaktir adoksaje. It is to render devotional service to Krishna. This we must be clear. As long as we are not clear about this, it is very difficult for us to approach the spiritual master. But once we are clear that this is our goal of life, then we have to approach the spiritual master. So the lady, in that example, she was very clear about the goal of approaching the wise man. And that goal was to cure the addiction of sweets that her son had. So sometimes the problem that we have in actually understanding the spiritual master is that even though we may say that I want to accept someone as spiritual master, we are not prepared to understand what is the goal of our life. This is what we call the foundation of the foundation. Very often when we preach, when we discuss Krishna consciousness, there are devotees who are ready to take shelter of spiritual master, but because they are not sure why they are doing it, they are not able to surrender. That is why tad vidhi pranipatena. That's why Krishna starts the sentence by saying, you just try to learn the truth. Prabhupada very often told us that accepting a spiritual master is not fashion. It is not that, because everybody is accepting a spiritual master, I should accept spiritual master. No. Prabhupada said spiritual master is not a dog, that you walk around every Sunday morning. The spiritual master means that we actually surrender. This is a very important point. So we have to approach. This is another important point. That lady, she understood at her level that she could not help her son. She had no capacity to help her son. We must also understand what is our capacity. If we think that we can approach Krishna directly, then the Shastras tell us that we don't have the qualification to approach Krishna directly because we are not purified enough and we don't understand enough to actually approach Krishna. It is a very important thing for us to understand that the main purpose of spiritual life is to render devotional service to Krishna. So this is the starting point that we must understand. If we don't understand that point, then the importance of spiritual master is lost. So please, at the very beginning, we must be clear of our goal. Prabhupada writes in the purport of 434 that the path of spiritual realization is actually very difficult. He says that in the first line of the purport, he says that the path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession, which is coming from the Lord himself. So this is very important. If we want to approach a spiritual master, that spiritual master must be qualified. And not only is he qualified because he has a certificate of qualification, but the true qualification is that whatever the spiritual master speaks, the spiritual master is practicing. This is a very important point. Practicing is actually the perfection of preaching. And the culmination of all preaching will result in the principle of practicing. This is a very important point we must understand. So when we want to approach a spiritual master, it is not that Prabhupada said that we should approach a spiritual master blindly. No. Otherwise, for example, if you go to India, you will find that there is a spiritual master literally under every tree. Everyone tells you that I will show you the way back to Godhead. But until they can practice what they are preaching, it is very difficult for us to actually follow them. So this is why Srila Prabhupada is so kind. He has so kindly given us a science of devotional service. And this science of devotional service is so wonderful that if we follow it, then we will come to understand who the spiritual master is. So please remember that the importance of the spiritual master is that he is none other. It is so nicely stated by Krishna in the 11th canto, 17th chapter, 27th verse, 11, 17, 27. Who is the spiritual master? Before trying to understand him, we have to understand who he is. It is stated very nicely in the 11th canto in that verse, Acharya mam vijaniyan, navamanyeta karhichit, na martya buddhya suyeta, sarva deva mayo guruho. And the translation is really nice. There it is stated that one should know the Acharya as myself. This is very important. Krishna says that the Acharya, the spiritual master, is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is how important the spiritual master is. But he is not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is very important. He is considered to be the servitor, the supreme servitor of the spiritual, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Krishna says, the Acharya, the spiritual master, you should know him as myself. In other words, you should never disrespect him in any way. You should never envy him, and you should never think him as an ordinary man, because he is the representative, Sarva Deva Mayo Guruho, of all the exalted Devatas. He is the representative of them. Now, if you have time and you study this verse, you'll find that in the purport, it is very nicely stated. The Prabhupada is actually quoted in the purport by the disciples of Prabhupada, because this part of Bhagavatam was actually written by the disciples. And they quote Srila Prabhupada. And they say, Prabhupada writes, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he writes on this verse. And what better person to tell us about the spiritual master than Srila Prabhupada? Srila Prabhupada says, the spiritual master is actually called an Acharya. You can see it in the purport. An Acharya means he is the transcendental professor of spiritual science. What a nice way to say the spiritual master. He is the transcendental professor. In other words, professor means expert, isn't it? But what is he expert in? Not material science, not chemistry, not physics, but he is the master of the spiritual science. And he's an Acharya. And he's not just an enjoyer. This is very important. Just above that, you will see the spiritual master is not just the enjoyer of facilities. No, more than that, he is actually like a parent. So my sharing with all of you is that when we approach a spiritual master, two things is very important before we can understand his mood. The first is that Krishna considers the spiritual master to be as good as himself. This is very important because the spiritual master opens the door for us to enter into the kingdom of God. How dear must that person be to Krishna? How dear. You know, sometimes when someone is very dear to you, when you love that person very much, isn't it very normal you tell someone else, please, you treat the person as you would treat me, isn't it? Because that person is so important to you. That is how Krishna is remembering the spiritual master. The spiritual master will never claim to be Krishna. This is a very important point. He will never claim to be Krishna. A simple way is that supposing you came to someone and you said, please give me the directions to where ISKCON Bergen is. That person, will tell you, you turn right, turn left, go straight, and walk up the path and you're at ISKCON Bergen. Now, he is a spiritual master because he is showing you the way to the goal of what you want. Supposing you ask him, please give me directions to ISKCON Bergen. And he tells you, you have arrived, I am ISKCON Bergen. Then you know something is wrong, isn't it? Because you know then that, well, this is not ISKCON Bergen. So the spiritual master is a guide, but he's such a wonderful guide that he doesn't put himself in the center, but he's always the transparent via medium. Through the spiritual master, you can directly, transparently see Krishna, but you see Krishna with the right lenses, Prabhus and Matajis. That's why he's a transparent via medium. That lens of seeing Krishna is so important. And the spiritual master, if we want to understand his mood, then we can really plug in, not only to his mood, but through his mood, we will be able to plug in into eternal devotional service to Krishna. This is a very important point for us to understand. So the spiritual master is the embodiment of mercy of the Lord. Please remember that. And therefore, how we approach the spiritual master will determine how we develop the mood of understanding him. And you will find in 434 of what we discussed just now, and in 11, 17, 27, which is what we just spoke about, between these two verses, one important principle comes on how we can understand the mood of the spiritual master. To understand the mood of the spiritual master, we must accept his mission. What is the mission of the spiritual master? The mission of the spiritual master is to actually guide each and every living entity to perform unalloyed devotional service to Krishna. That is all the spiritual master's mission is. All he wants is always that somehow or another to bring the disciples to the lotus feet of Krishna. That is his mission. And each spiritual master makes his spiritual master's mission his mission. Srila Prabhupada made the mission of his spiritual master of spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the world into his mission. And therefore, if you are initiated by a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, you will realize that disciple, that guru, will also make Srila Prabhupada's mission his mission. And then we make that mission our mission. That is very important. So in order to understand the mood of the spiritual master, we should actually be plugged into his mission. Once we are plugged into his mission, then we can begin to understand what is his mood. So we must learn to execute the mission of the spiritual master. And if we do not learn how to execute the mission of the spiritual master, then we are not prepared for initiation. Because what does initiation mean? In a very nice lecture, Prabhupada quoted 434. And what does Krishna say in 434? Krishna merely says in 434 that you just surrender to the spiritual master. But what does Prabhupada explain surrender as? He says it in a very nice way. He says, if you want to surrender to the spiritual master, the question is, what are you surrendering? And Prabhupada says, we have to surrender our pride. This is very important. The biggest obstacle between us and success in spiritual life is actually pride. It is pride that actually stops us from accepting instructions from even Krishna. All the great demons in Srimad Bhagavatam, why is it that they had so much difficulty with Krishna? Because they refused to accept what he was giving. They refused to accept his instructions. Because where there is pride, pride is always there because there is envy. Please remember that. Where there is pride, the root of pride is because we are always envious of others. And we are envious of others because we are proud of who we are. And if you have pride, then envy will be there. And when there is envy, the symptom of envy and pride will be that we are always angry. So it's very easy to remember this, PEA. Garden peas, we eat peas. So just remember PEA. The obstacle between us surrendering to our spiritual master starts with pride. And that's why Srila Prabhupada says that we should surrender our pride. At the time of initiation, surrendering to the orders of the spiritual master means that we put aside our pride and with humility, we fall at his lotus feet and we inquire submissively about our spiritual life. This is very important. So now you are realizing, Prabhus and Matajis, that our Shastras are telling us that in order for us to understand the mood of the spiritual master, we have to cultivate certain qualities. It becomes very obvious when we study spiritual life and Bhagavatam, that Bhagavatam is all about behavior. Bhagavatam is B, and Bhagavatam is all about behavior, which is also B. And when we surrender to spiritual master, surrendering is not a ritual. Surrendering is a cultivation of qualities. That is very important point about surrendering. And in 434 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us that there are three very important qualities: submission, service, and inquiry. These are the three qualities that we must have in our hearts. If we cultivate these three qualities at the time of initiation, we will begin to understand the mood of the spiritual master. So let's break them down, because Shastras tell us so much about them, and there's so many nice examples that we can understand. The first important thing that you find is that one must become submissive. Submissive to what? Submissive to the orders of the spiritual master. And you will realize that you cannot become submissive until you become obedient, isn't it? Until we become obedient to someone, it's very hard to be submissive. In the corporate world, in the material world, in the secular world, when you use the word submissive, it is very often taken as a sign of weakness. Oh, don't become submissive to someone. Why? Because we know in the material world, people exploit your submission. Isn't it true? Very often, if you are in the corporate world or anywhere, if you try to be very submissive, there's always a chance that you'll be exploited. Yes. So we should be very intelligent at the same time. That's why we should know who we are submitting to. If we submit to the materialist, he will exploit us. If we submit to the pure devotee of the Lord, whose only goal is to bring us to Krishna, that submission becomes very valuable. But we cannot submit until we obey. And therefore, obedience becomes the platform for submission. Very important. But obeying the spiritual master means that we actually have to listen and hear what he says. We cannot say that, Maharaj, I accept you as my spiritual master. And then when he tells us what to do, we say, no, 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 I don't think that's correct. I think I should do that. That means we have not actually submitted. That means we are not actually obedient. There's a very good example in Shastras that is very helpful. There was a time in the Mahabharata when Arjuna, was actually always seen as the greatest disciple of Dronacharya. And you all know that Dronacharya loved Arjuna so much because not only was he very competent in shooting, that is a nice thing, but he was very submissive in his mood of surrender to his spiritual master, who in this case was the expert in Dhanurveda, which is the art of warfare, Dronacharya. One day the Pandavas went into the forest and they were practicing their archery and they were actually playing and all, when suddenly, there was a dog, a hunting dog came out, and it opened its mouth and it was barking. And at that point of time, Arjuna, to keep it quiet, shot arrows into its mouth. And when he shot the arrows into his mouth, at the same time, he found that there were arrows coming from another direction, and they were also entering the mouth of that animal. Arjuna turned around thinking, who is this person who's doing it? And to his surprise, he saw a boy, who was about his age. And he was a prince of the Nishada tribe. And he asked him, how is it that you have learned this art of shooting so well? Who is your guru? And this boy said, my name is Ekalavya. I am a Nishada prince. And my guru is Dronacharya. So Arjuna was thinking, hey, this is very unusual. Dronacharya had never mentioned that that you are his disciple. So he rushed back, and Arjuna said, he shot so well, my dear guru. Have you taught him something that I don't know, maybe? So Arjuna was feeling, that why Dronacharya was always telling that he was very happy with me, but he never told me that he had another disciple. Dronacharya himself thought, hey, I myself don't know that he's my disciple. This is a very unusual relationship, right? The spiritual master himself doesn't know he has a disciple. So he said, okay, fine. Let me try and remember who is this boy. So they all went to see the Nishada prince. And to his surprise, Ekalavya had actually constructed a statue of Dronacharya. And in front of Dronacharya, he was shooting arrows, and he was training himself in the art of archery. So Dronacharya said, jog my memory a bit, my dear Nishada prince. But you say that you have accepted me as guru? And Ekalavya said, my dear spiritual master, I am so happy to see you today. Today is the perfection of my existence. You may not remember, but once many years ago, I came to see you and I fell at your lotus feet and I said that I'm Ekalavya and I want to learn the art of archery. So you told me to shoot some arrows and I shot them. And I think I did very well. And you were very pleased. And then I turned to you and said, please accept me as your disciple. And you told me that if you want to be accepted as my disciple, then do one thing. My first instruction is that you should not be doing archery. If you want to learn something, then I'm telling you that you should not learn this. And I will not accept you as a disciple in the art of archery. And Ekalavya thought, I felt very disappointed at that time. Maybe because I felt I was not very good. So what did I do? Even though you did not accept me, I went back to my place. And because I had so much love for you, I built a statue of you. And from there, I practiced and practiced and practiced. And today, All that I've practiced, I offer at your lotus feet. Dronacharya looked at him and said, well, it is tradition that if you want to accept me as guru, you must give me some dakshina, Dakshina means there must be some sacrifice from outside when we accept someone as the spiritual master. It cannot be, that we accept someone and we are not ready to accept them in our hearts. So sometimes there is a price that the spiritual master will ask. And Shastras tell us that is the test of how ready we are to surrender to the spiritual master. So Dronacharya was clever. He said, I want some dakshina from you, Ekalavya. And Ekalavya said, anything you want, Gurudev, just tell me and I will give it to you. And so he said, just cut off your right thumb and give it to me. That will become my dakshina. And Ekalavya, without hesitation, he just sliced off his thumb and he gave it to Dronacharya. And when he sliced off his thumb, what was the effect of it? The effect of it is that Dronacharya ensured that Ekalavya, the next time he could actually shoot an arrow, would never be able to shoot it with the accuracy that Arjuna could do. Because without your thumb, it is actually very difficult to shoot an arrow. Now, when you hear this story, the first impression you will get is that Ekalavya was such a dedicated disciple and he was so plugged into the mood of his spiritual master. He understood the mood of his spiritual master and his mood was to satisfy the spiritual master. But actually, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, who is the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, actually took this incident from Mahabharata to tell us that this is a classic example of how we do not actually surrender to the spiritual master. And how when we do not surrender to the spiritual master, we cannot be plugged into the mood of the spiritual master. Now we may think, how? What happened? It's subtle, but it's very important. The main point that we turn to the spiritual master is that we are prepared to surrender to his instructions. And whatever instructions he gives, the spiritual master always does it to check our pride, our envy, and to make sure that whatever that is in our heart does not become an impediment between us and Krishna. A spiritual master always elevates the consciousness of his disciple. Dronacharya was a very great personality. Even though he was on the side of the Kauravas, the Mahabharata will attest that he, Kripacharya, Bhishma Dev, they were all actually very great and exalted personalities. Dronacharya accepted Arjuna as a disciple, not on account of his skills only, but on account of his devotional service and on his mood of always following the orders of the spiritual master. Arjuna was surrendered to the instructions of Drona. And if Drona told Arjuna not to perform something, Arjuna would accept it. He may inquire, but he would inquire submissively and he would accept it. When Ekalavya came, Dronacharya already knew that Ekalavya had come before him in a challenging mood because he wanted to accept Dronacharya so that he could become better than Arjuna. His mood was actually one of envy, and he had come with a material objective, but he disguised it under the idea that I'm actually surrendering at the lotus feet of the spiritual master for the gathering of knowledge on a pure level and not without motive. But the spiritual master understands the mood of the disciple better than we understand his mood. And therefore, what did he do? He actually decided that it is better in this mood of pride that actually Ekalavya does not surrender. Because if he surrenders, he knew that that surrender is false. He would not accept the instructions of the spiritual master, and he would not perform his services in the right mood. So Dronacharya's first instruction was the best instruction. His only instruction to the Nishada prince was, I will not accept you, and that is my instruction. And now you become peaceful and do all other duties. If Ekalavya had accepted it, he would have understood why Dronacharya did not want to accept him. He would have introspected that it is because my mood of accepting, of approaching Guru is not right. It is not humble. It is not actually surrendered. I was not surrendering my pride. I was surrendering to increase my pride eventually that I will become better than Arjuna. You see the subtle important point? And therefore the first instruction of Guru was don't do something. And that very first instruction, Ekalavya ignored. And therefore, even though he constructed a statue of Dronacharya, to all intents and purposes, he was not surrendered to Guru. And there was no initiation because it was all done whimsically. So this is a very important point. If we want to actually surrender to Guru, then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj says that the surrender must come on the basis of submission. The submission is on such a high level that whatever the Guru tells us, we must actually be ready to accept it, test it, but accept it first. That is very important point. Prabhupada, in no other part of our scriptures does Prabhupada say that we should just blindly follow the spiritual master, but we should accept it with faith. Arjuna accepted whatever Dronacharya said with faith, and therefore he was a true disciple. Ekalavya was told, you are not ready for initiation. Did he accept it? No. He thought he was ready, but he ignored the first rule of understanding the mood of the spiritual master, and that is to accept his instructions. So if we really want to understand the mood of the spiritual master, it is humility and it is submission to the instruction that is important. When you have time, you should look at this very important verse from Bhagavatam. There, the standard of accepting the order of the spiritual master is nicely given. 3rd canto, 24th chapter, 13th verse. 3rd canto, 24th chapter, 13th verse. Brahma became very, very happy, in this verse, because Kardama Muni, who did not want to get married, even though he did not want to get married, but when Brahma came and spoke to him and told him that you should get married and you should actually use this marriage to advance Krishna consciousness and propagate Krishna consciousness. And because Kardama Muni submitted to Brahma as the authority, Brahma became very happy. And look at this verse. Etavati eva shushrushaha karya pitari putrakai badam iti anumanyeta gauravena guru vachaha. This is very important. The word-to-word meaning of Bhagavatam is how Srila Prabhupada gave us a deeper understanding of the words. So if you want to understand this verse nicely, do not ignore one word from the shloka. And that word is Gauravena. Gauravena means with due deference. Deference means I may ask you something, but because I accept that you have higher knowledge than me, even though I may have a slight difference of opinion or I'm not so sure, I will defer to you out of respect. Very often our journey in spiritual life with the spiritual master begins that way. It is not that overnight we are ready to obey everything, but it is a spiritual journey. It begins with a relationship with the spiritual master, asking questions. Kardama Muni did not immediately obey Brahma, but he deferred to Brahma. He told Brahma, he presented to Brahma with humility, why I don't want to get married, why I want to continue just being in the devotional service. But after putting forward all his sincere inquiries, he then deferred to Brahma. This is the mood in which we accept the spiritual master. If we just say that I do not want to accept the spiritual master because we are not aligned, then you become Ekalavya. Then you will do whatever you want. But if you have doubts, but you put it forward to the spiritual master with due deference, then you will find the spiritual master will himself give you the potency to follow his orders. This is very important point, very important. And this is very nice. See the translation. Sons ought to render service exactly to this extent. One should obey the command of his father or spiritual master with due deference, saying, yes, sir. So nice, huh? Yes, sir. And if you read the purport, Prabhupada is uncompromising in his purport. Sometimes, when you are sick, right, you can't get too much of sugar coating. You need a strong dose of a pill. And Srila Prabhupada was like that. Srila Prabhupada, the beauty of Srila Prabhupada and the beauty of the spiritual master is that they say it as it is. They say it as it is. Another meaning of Guru is one who is heavy. Guru means one who is ready to also cut through all the illusion that we have, And this is very important. In the purport, Prabhupada says very nicely, the son or disciple should accept the words of his spiritual master and father without hesitation. Whatever the spiritual master or father orders should be taken without argument. This sounds very difficult, isn't it, for our trained minds, where we always think, no, 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 I have to argue, I have to say something. Let's hear some more. There should be no instance in which the disciple or the son says, this is not correct, I cannot carry it out. When he says that, he is fallen, full stop. It sounds really difficult. The father and the spiritual master are on the same platform because the spiritual master is the second father. The higher classes are called Dvija, twice born. Now, that's not the part I'm looking at. I'm looking at the part just little bit lower. Little bit lower. You will see little bit lower. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comes up, isn't it? Just before him. Look at the word. In any case, the order of the spiritual master must be carried out without hesitation. That there should be no argument. That is real service to the Father and to the spiritual master. Now, Prabhupada is giving us the reason why this is important. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has stated that the order of the spiritual master is the life and soul of the disciples. As a man cannot separate his life from his body, a disciple cannot separate instructions, cannot separate the order of the spiritual master from his life. If a disciple follows the instructions of the spiritual master in that way, he is sure to become perfect. This is confirmed in the Upanishads. The import of Vedic instruction is revealed automatically only to one who has implicit faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and in his spiritual master. And Prabhupada ends, one may be materially considered an illiterate man, but if he has faith in the spiritual master as well as in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the meaning of scriptural revelation is immediately manifested before him. There is an example to this, Prabhus and Matajis. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling, in southern India, and he came across this wonderful temple of Ranganath. It is a very beautiful temple. And there, when he reached the temple, he saw one Brahmana seated and reading the Gita. Everyone around told Mahaprabhu that this Brahmana is illiterate, can't read. And Mahaprabhu was thinking, if he's illiterate, then how is he reading the Gita? Some people thought, he's making a show of it. Some people thought he's a really foolish man. He can't read, but he's reading the Gita. But Mahaprabhu noticed one thing, that he had tears in his eyes, So Mahaprabhu approached him and asked him this question. He said, my dear sir, everyone tells me that you are illiterate. You have no capacity to read. Yet why are you reading the Gita? And the Brahmana turned to him in a very humble way and said, my spiritual master, whom I surrendered to, I asked him for what instruction I can take from you to advance my devotional service and please you. And my spiritual master told me, daily you just read the Gita. And the illiterate Brahmana said that I knew that I could not read the Gita, and I explained it to my spiritual master. I told him, my dear spiritual master, you have asked me to read the Gita, but I'm illiterate. And my spiritual master said, don't worry, just have faith in me and please read the Gita. And then I told myself that if my spiritual master has faith that I can read the Gita, then why should I not have faith in my spiritual master that he will reveal how to read the Gita? This is a very important point to understand the mood of the spiritual master. That we must understand that we may be able to get so much theoretical knowledge, or we may have so many limitations, but we should have firm faith, Prabhus and Matajis, that when we follow the order of the spiritual master, he will actually empower us, just like Krishna empowers us, to understand and realize what we are reading. In doing so, the spiritual master will break down our pride. He will also make us more humble, because we may think, I know better than the spiritual master. And so what did this Brahmana do? Illiterate doesn't mean he's not smart, he just couldn't read. But his intelligence was in his surrender. That is the true way of using intelligence. And so he started reading. So Mahaprabhu said, so can you read now? And he said, I still don't know how to read. So Mahaprabhu said, then why are you reading? And he said, because I realize now my spiritual master is wanting me to hold the Gita. He is wanting me to always remember what is the scene of the Gita. And the scene of the Gita, I don't need to read. I know that Arjuna was seated on the chariot, and Krishna was so kind that he became the charioteer to Arjuna. And when I remember how being a charioteer to Arjuna is such a menial service, and yet Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, was there to serve his devotee. When I remember that, I think how kind and merciful is the supreme personality of Godhead. Do you know how difficult it is to be a charioteer? Do you think in the height and the heat of the warfare, Arjuna had the time to say, my dear Krishna, O supreme personality of Godhead, please turn the horses right? He's not going to do that. He's not going to say, can you please turn the horses left? I'm very sorry, you are the supreme. By that time, 100 arrows would have come. No, a charioteer means turn right, turn left, shouting above the din of the war. Sometimes even using the leg, to push the shoulder of the charioteer. That's what they did. But the illiterate Brahmana said, my spiritual master has given me the eyes to see the mercy of the Lord and see how kind he is to Arjuna. And that is the import of Bhagavad Gita. That Bhagavad Gita is the embodiment of the mercy of the Lord. And I can only understand this, oh dear Mahaprabhu, because my spiritual master has given me this instruction. What a beautiful point. This is how we understand the mood of the Guru, by following his instructions. And sometimes you may say, following his instructions means, yes, sir. That means every time the spiritual master says something, we have to follow? Yes. It is as clear as that. Parashuram is the incarnation of the Lord. And one day he went out to get wood, for the fire in the hermitage. He had 3 or 4 other brothers. And Jamadagni was his great father, was also his spiritual master. One day, Jamadagni's wife Renuka went to get water from the river. When she came back, Jamadagni was very powerful. When he saw her, he was very upset. He said, when you were at the place where you were picking water, what happened? A Gandharva was passing by, very beautiful personality. You saw the Gandharva, and in your mind you thought, this Gandharva looks very handsome. The moment you saw the Gandharva and you thought he looked very handsome, you have become unchaste. In those days, the standard of chastity was so high, I think all of us would have been finished. Because not even a single moment was a husband or wife so dedicated to the chastity of their vows. And that was the chastity of a disciple to the spiritual master. So Jamadagni became very unhappy. He turned to his 3 sons who were in front of him. And he said, do you all accept me as your spiritual master? And they said, Father, you are our spiritual master. Whatever you say, yes, sir, we will follow. And he said, I have become displeased with your mother. She needs to be purified. I want you to take an axe now and behead her immediately. And the 3 sons said, Father, how can you do that? What a terrible punishment for the mother. And Jamadagni turned them into stone. All became stone, statues. Now Parashuram came back. And what a scene it was in front of him. 3 of his brothers were turned into statues. His mother was sitting down and she was lamenting. And his father was looking very, very upset. So he went to his father and said, my dear father, what is the cause of this calamitous situation? And father turned to him and said only one thing. Do you accept me as your spiritual master? And Parashuram said, yes, always. I have lived with you. I have found that whatever you have told me has always helped me. So tell me what I must do. And he said, very simple. I want you to chop off the head of your mother because she has committed an offense and she needs purification. What did Parashuram do? Without hesitation, he picked up the axe and he chopped off the head of his mother. At that point of time, Jamadagni became very pleased. And he turned to Parashuram and said, I have become so pleased with your deference to me that I give you a boon. Ask me whatever you want and I will give it to you. In fact, I will not only give you 1 boon, but I will give you 3 boons. And the first boon Parashuram asked was very simple. He said, please bring my mother back to life because she is actually a faultless personality. And Jamadagni became very pleased. The second boon is, please bring my brothers back to life because even though they were not very sure of their vows to you, please be merciful to them and please instruct them. And Jamadagni became very happy. And what was the third boon? The third boon was, please be merciful to me and thank you. And please give me the strength always to follow you as my spiritual master and as my father. And Jamadagni became very, very pleased with Parashuram. This is a very simple story, but it tells us a very important point about to what extent this obedience to the spiritual master is necessary to understand his mood. This is a very important point. So this is obedience. Once one is ready to obey the spiritual master, how do we obey the spiritual master? There are only two qualities needed. One is the quality of humility, very important, and the other is the quality of gentleness. When we are very gentle and ready to obey, when we are very submissive and pliable, the spiritual master becomes very pleased. Some of you may be teachers in the congregation. If you're teaching Sunday school or you're a teacher by profession, you realize there are only two kinds of students in the world. Two kinds of students will ask you questions. One will ask you questions in the spirit of challenge. I challenge you just for the sake of challenging. And you know that person is not there to learn. Any teacher will tell you, that they are not very enthused to teach such a student. They're not very enthused. But then there are students who ask you 100,000 questions. But they ask you because they have a genuine desire to understand a knowledge, and they have a genuine desire to understand what will please you and what is it you want. Such a student becomes very dear to the spiritual master. And the only way we can have that kind of mood is to be submissive and to be gentle. In 118 of Srimad Bhagavatam, this point is captured, Suta Goswami spoke Bhagavatam to the sages of Naimisharanya for 1,000 years. They sat down for the fire sacrifice and he spoke Bhagavatam. But before he could speak Bhagavatam, they turned to him and they requested him to speak Bhagavatam. Because Suta Goswami was in the great assembly of the sages when Parikshit Maharaj was seated and he was hearing Bhagavatam from Shukadev Goswami. But why did the sages ask Suta Goswami to speak Bhagavatam and repeat it to them? Because of one important thing. Vetatvam saumya tat sarvam tadvatastat anugrahat bruyo snigdasya sishyasya gurovo guyamapi utaha. The translation is very nice. The sages are speaking to Suta Goswami. Because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. Very important, two words come out. One is Suta Goswami's qualification to repeat transcendental knowledge was based on his humility because he was submissive. When we become submissive, we become humble. The more we become humble, the more we are submissive to the spiritual master. But both submission and humility come when the spiritual master bestows their favor and their blessings on a disciple who is gentle by nature. Gentle by nature means always ready to obey the orders of the spiritual master. Not because we are just obeying blindly, but because we are inquiring, we are submissive, and we have faith that when we accept the words of the spiritual master, we know that that will actually help us in spiritual life. The illiterate Brahmana understood that. Arjuna understood that no matter how powerful he was, without the blessings of Dronacharya, he would never become the greatest warrior. Ekalavya thought that I have a motive to become the best, but what to do? I need a guru. So let me just find a guru, surrender to him, and do whatever I want. But to surrender to Guru means not to do whatever you want. It means to surrender your pride. It means to become obedient. It means, like what Parashuram did, to say yes, sir, first and execute the order. And when you execute the order, the spiritual master becomes pleased because he's testing the determination of the disciple. And then when you go back to the spiritual master, he will then give you further instructions, or he will bestow upon you more blessings. And that potency is what makes our spiritual life grow. Every spiritual master in our movement will have a particular mood. They will have a primary mood. The primary mood is always to serve Srila Prabhupada and to render unalloyed devotional service to Krishna. That is the primary mood of all the spiritual masters in our movement. But every spiritual master will also have what we call the special rasa or the special mood. Some spiritual masters may emphasize book distribution. Some spiritual masters may emphasize serious study of Bhagavatam. Some spiritual masters may emphasize, please do service by doing food for life. Some spiritual masters will emphasize that we must do a lot of chanting. At different points of our lives, the spiritual master will expertly emphasize different areas of devotional service. And therefore, the mood of the spiritual master, we must flow with. If the wind is moving your sails in a particular area and you're in the boat, you're not going to turn the sail away from the wind, isn't it? Then your boat will stop. But if you realize that the winds are moving in one direction, the smart, intelligent person will move the sail in that direction. To become aligned with the movement of the wind is to become aligned with the mood of the spiritual master. And that will bring us to our required destination. And what is our required destination? Krishna Prema. To serve the spiritual master and to serve Srila Prabhupada and to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Time is coming up, and I want to end with one very important point that we should not forget. In Prabhupada Lilamrita, the devotees observed a very wonderful pastime of Srila Prabhupada, which we should always remember. Srila Prabhupada was in Madras, Chennai at that time, and a retired High Court judge who was very devotional in nature, he invited Prabhupada and his disciples for some prasad. They went over to the house of the judge, and the judge, he took out a beautiful deity form of Krishna and he presented it to Prabhupada. Prabhupada accepted the gift very lovingly. And amongst the devotees who had come with Prabhupada was little Saraswati. You all remember, if you read in Lilamrita, Saraswati was actually the first devotee child born into the Krishna conscious movement. And she was very dear to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was very dear to her. So wherever Prabhupada went, Saraswati would follow. So Saraswati was there also. So when Prabhupada took the deity of Krishna, he playfully gave it to Saraswati and said, Saraswati, here is Krishna. And then as Prabhupada was seated and they were talking, Prabhupada was observing Saraswati playing with Krishna. And then after a while, Prabhupada became transcendently mischievous. When Saraswati turned, he took away the deity of Krishna and he hid her, the deity of Krishna. Suddenly Saraswati looked around, and she started saying, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? And then the devotees and all realized Prabhupada was having that smile. So the disciples, they caught on, and they also started saying, Saraswati, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? But Saraswati started becoming anxious, just like devotees of the highest sentiment, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? She didn't know where was Krishna. She was bewildered. She was confused. She was using all her ability to try and find where is Krishna, but she couldn't because her ability was limited. And then suddenly one of the devotees just framed the question in a different way. Sometimes as lawyers in cross-examination of witness, you ask the same question over and over, they give you the same answer. But the trick is to turn the question around and change the focus. And suddenly you find they've just admitted to everything and you've won the case. Come back to Lilamrita. That's what the devotee did. The devotee asked a very important question that sometimes you and I miss to ask. And that's why we cannot plug into the Guru. Instead of asking, where is Krishna? The devotee asked, Saraswati, who has Krishna? Who has Krishna? And the moment Saraswati heard that, she broke into a smile. She pointed at Srila Prabhupada and she said, Srila Prabhupada has Krishna. And the moment she said that, Prabhupada from behind took the deity of Krishna and with a warm smile, he handed the deity of Krishna to Saraswati. And the devotees looking at that, they realized that this was not a simple exchange between an elderly gentleman and a young girl. It actually enshrined the whole principle of the spiritual master's strength. The spiritual master has Krishna. He has Krishna because he is 100% surrendered to Krishna. If we can only understand that if we are submissive, if we are sincere, if we are humble, and we, on that platform, we inquire about spiritual life, it is the spiritual master who then allows us and reveals to us his mood. And in that revelation, we can become plugged in. And then we will actually come to understand by his mercy who Krishna is. And that is the perfection of our existence. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Jai Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the assembled Vaishnavas, and all glories to the assembled spiritual masters of our movement. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Ramchandra Prabhu, for giving us this chance to share with you some thoughts.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. This was a reminder for me, especially, and such nice examples and verses that you quoted and as reference points. Thank you very much. If it's okay, can I take a few seconds to just go over some upcoming program announcements?
Sure, Prabhu. Sure.
Thank you. And in the meantime, if devotees have any questions, please raise your hand or you can type in the chat box. So our upcoming programs are as follows. This coming Wednesday, this Wednesday Sangha program has been a great success for us. We started actually before even the COVID came into picture. This was mainly to connect devotees on a weekday because we always met on weekends, only Sunday program and Bhakti Vrikshas, but we thought let's meet on Wednesdays also right in the middle of the weekend. It's been a very successful program. So this Wednesday, we have Her Grace Savitri Mataji will be speaking on the topic of Krishna is our dearmost friend, how and why. And the next Sunday, we have His Grace Gopal Hari Prabhu who will be speaking on Lord Chaitanya's meeting with Raghunath Das Goswami. Also on our website, iskonofbergen.org, you can see many of the programs. We have a successful Thursday evening, 8:30 to 9, storytelling for children. Every Friday, Bhakti Vrikshas. We have several Bhakti Vriksha programs. And every Sunday, we also have a Sunday school for children. And Bhagavad Gita readings every afternoon, 12 to 12:15, to get away from your busy work schedule. Take 15 minutes to read some verses, and daily morning japa from 6 to 8. Those who are not familiar, just see if you have any friends who would like to plug them into Krishna consciousness, feel free to reach out to me, and we will reach out to them and connect them to our programs. So with that, anybody has a question, feel free to unmute or raise your hand. Dheeraj Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, my question is in terms of the Ekalavya and Dronacharya relationship. Ekalavya, as per my understanding, what I was listening is, it seems like Ekalavya did not inquire in a very submissive mode, or he did not follow the instruction as given by the Guru. What made him to be like at that expert level as Arjuna was? Like when he shot the arrow, the similar way what Arjuna did. If his submission was not that, if his submission was not at the level was expected or not at all, then what made him to achieve that expertness?
Very nice question, Prabhu. Actually, Ekalavya would have been just as skillful as Arjuna. Materially speaking, his talent was unparalleled. But the only difference was, where did the talent take him to? The talent that Arjuna had took him to become an instrument in the hands of Krishna. In 11:33 of Bhagavad Gita, Dheeraj Prabhu, very nicely, Krishna tells Arjuna that Maya vaite nihata purva eva, nimitta matra bhavya savya sachi. He says that actually, Arjuna, all these people that you are going to kill or vanquish, they've all actually been vanquished by me. by my internal potency and by the power of my divine arrangement, whoever's supposed to leave this world on the battlefield, I've already arranged. So then actually what is the purpose to Arjuna then? He had so much skill, he had so much of talent, but then Krishna told him one thing, Nimitta Matra Bhavya Sabyasachi. Sabyasachi actually is describing Arjuna as the expert shooter of arrows, Prabhu. Actually, if you think about it in a humorous way, Krishna was actually employing transcendental sarcasm here because he was calling Arjuna Sabyasachi. In other words, you're so expert at shooting arrows, but I've got news for you. Every arrow before they've hit someone, I've already finished them. So actually, where was the glory in Ekalavya's greatness of shooting? It didn't interest Dronacharya. What Dronacharya was interested in was the attitude of Ekalavya. The true perfection of our surrender is in our devotional attitude. The goal of surrendering is not really the expert acquisition of that science or the subject. Supposing, Prabhu, I learned so many shlokas and I know Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, but my mood is not surrendered to the spiritual master. Then for me to get taste out of reading Bhagavatam, to get realization out of reading Bhagavatam, it will be elusive to me. I will be an Ekalavya. On paper, I can do everything Arjuna did. But finally, what did Arjuna do? Arjuna abandoned all his skills by accepting that actually Krishna is the most skillful person. And he could only do it because he was in the mood of surrender. So you realize that spiritual life is a journey the spiritual master takes you through. We all have capacity. The spiritual master will ensure that we don't become proud of our capacity, that we surrender our pride at the doorstep. And then the spiritual master takes us through it to make us understand at the end of the day, the goal is not how you read the Gita. The goal is not how many shlokas you know. The goal is not how nice your tilak is. The goal finally is how much you are ready to surrender to Krishna. Krishna did not want the Kauravas to win the war. He just wanted Arjuna to become an instrument. Instrument means, like a knife. A knife in the hand of a thief is very dangerous, right? But the knife in the hand of a surgeon is very helpful. So actually, it is not so much our talent that's important, but it's how we engage it to please the spiritual master that becomes important. Ekalavya missed this point, but Arjuna actually had it. And that's why the comparison is not in the material acquisition of their talent or their capacity. The real difference between one who is surrendered and not is actually in whether they achieve the goal and the mood of what the spiritual master wants them to achieve. That is important. Is that helpful, Dheeraj Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. With your permission, Prabhuji, if you, can I ask one more follow-up question on that?
I leave it to you. No problems. I'm happy.
So, Prabhuji, surrendering to Guruji and being submissive, it's like we are in a position, or we don't have that qualification to be 100% submissive, because every time I'm looking at the things, my perspective or my thought process is changing, and that makes me like, many times it happens like even you have a submissive mode, but after some time there's certain question raised in the mind. You might try to avoid that question, but that's there in the mind, and that disturbs your path, or at least that moment that keeps you away from the test. So probably if you can help us, or you can elaborate like what to do in those situations where your mind is not troubling you. You want to be surrendered, but your mind is not allowing you.
I think I can answer it in two ways, Prabhu. In the first situation, it could be that in the first situation, you are already initiated, supposing. You have surrendered to spiritual master. And then when he gives you an instruction, you try to execute it. But along the way of execution, there is some doubt. There are some, obstacles. Does it mean then that when a doubt comes into the mind, does it mean that you are not submissive to the spiritual master? That's one scenario, Prabhu. No? So in that situation, you should not feel discouraged when inquiries come into the mind. It is very natural. And the spiritual master is a very practical person, Prabhu. When you see Srila Prabhupada and you read about him, You find many times devotees who are surrendered to Prabhupada would come and say, Prabhupada, I have a doubt. Prabhupada, I have an inquiry. The mood of the spiritual master is that no matter how many inquiries you have, as long as your inquiries are on the platform that I'm inquiring because I really want to learn and I really want to follow the instructions, help me. In that mood, the spiritual master is happy with 1,000 inquiries. Because the nature of inquiry, Prabhu, we have to understand. When you have time, look at first canto, third chapter, 39th verse. 1, 3, 39. In that verse, that is the only verse in Bhagavatam that once and for all tells us the power of inquiries. Very often we don't realize that actually the power of inquiry is very important. In that verse, it is nicely stated. The verse starts with Ateha Danya Bhagavantamittam. That's the verse. So in the verse, nicely it is stated, only by making such inquiries in this world. Thank you, Prabhu. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful. Such inquiries means inquiries about spiritual life. So as long as we have doubts, doubts are transformed into inquiries, Dheeraj Prabhu. These inquiries will always make us successful. Why? It will keep us always conscious that we are on the path of always progressing. But the third thing is very important. When we inquire to the spiritual master, we are actually invoking transcendental ecstatic love for Krishna. You see? So have faith. By inquiring about how to perform an instruction, this is the way, actually, this is the royal road in which you will begin to invoke love of God. Because the spiritual master becomes very pleased. He realizes you will only ask questions if you're serious about something, isn't it? If you're not serious, you say, okay, whatever spiritual master says, Hari bol. How does he know whether I'm executing or not? He's not in my house, isn't it? But because you know he's in your heart and you have accepted it, that's why you're asking questions. So the spiritual master understands you, Prabhu. He fully understands your sincerity. So go ahead and ask. Never feel discouraged. All spiritual masters are very happy to engage with disciples. My spiritual master, when he was present, I had the good fortune of hearing him every day because I had to call him every day. So every day I had some questions on so many issues. But every time he would hear me, and very practically he would adjust things based on whether I could do it, I could not. So the spiritual master is ready to do anything and everything to serve the disciple, as long as the disciple can show in the heart that he's in the mood of actually becoming an instrument in the hands of the spiritual master. So if you want to plug into his mood, have the mood that Arjuna had. Nimitta matra bhavya savya sachi. Is that helpful, Dheeraj Prabhu? And if you're not initiated yet and you're thinking, oh my God, because I have so many doubts, I can't be initiated. Don't worry. At some point, Prabhu, when you have to take a bath, you have to get wet, isn't it? Can't say I'm going to take a bath and then stand 1 meter away from the shower. The plunge must happen. It must happen. You know, sometimes we say, I want to get married, but I'm wondering if I get married, is she the right person? She's not. Man, we'll never know she's the right person or whether she's not. And she won't know if you are the right person or you're not. But some testing is there. You know her a little bit, she knows you a little bit. But even then, once you stay together, how she puts the toothbrush, where you put your tissue paper, all this becomes adjustment. Even in material life, we are ready to take the plunge. Why we cannot have faith in the pure devotee of the Lord? So these are my answers, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for the
Thank
very
you.
enlightening.
Thank you.
Going, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hari Bol, Dandavad, Prabhu.
Tanil Pranam Prabhuji. Very nice, beautiful class, full of nectar, glorifying Guru and the importance. My question is about you mentioned a lot of things about accepting the instructions from the Guru and following it properly. Spiritual masters by nature are very, very humble, very very forgiving, but the instructions are sometimes very difficult to follow. And if it takes longer time, it kind of feels like not doing the justified justification to that instruction. And over the period of time, the line of instructions piles up. How do we handle that? And am I committing any offense to that? I know uh, some way it has to be, there has to be some balance. Not everybody is at the level of Arjuna, or it's very difficult for a common person. Just give an answer for common person, for me.
I'll give the answer for me also, Prabhu, because I'm also struggling with that. But we should take heart in this point. It took Srila Prabhupada so many years to finally fulfill the instructions and order of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If you look at the timeline between the time Prabhupada met him, the time when Prabhupada, moved to execute his instructions, it didn't happen overnight. Prabhupada had his family. He sometimes had doubts whether he was ready to renounce. He had dreams of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur coming. So it was a journey for Srila Prabhupada also. But the important thing, Prabhu, is that even if we cannot fulfill the order immediately, sometimes even when Krishna gives instructions in Bhagavad Gita, we find it difficult to follow. So then what to do? The instruction is very nicely given by Srila Prabhupada in the purport of the 3rd chapter, 31st verse of Bhagavad Gita. Ramchandra Prabhu, I'm sorry, I'll trouble you for this because it's very important to see that one line, 331 of Bhagavad Gita. At the end of the purport, Prabhupada gives a perfect answer to this question. And I think it's best just to read from Prabhupada. Yeah, just a little down, Prabhu, just towards the end. It's the last, yes, over here, yes. You'll find, Prabhu, at the end there, Prabhupada writes, in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord. That means we're all beginners and we're all struggling. And in the beginning, we may not be able to fully discharge his injunctions. The injunctions of the Lord are the same as the injunctions of Guru. But now Prabhupada says the thing that's important. We must not be resentful of whatever principles and instructions Krishna has given us or Guru has given us. If we are not resentful, then we should continue to work sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness. In other words, Gopal Govind Prabhu, no matter how long it takes, we should never feel, that we should not feel resentful. Oh, this is a terrible, impossible instruction. We should have faith. But we should say that we are the ones, who are not up to the mark. But doesn't mean we feel hopeless either. Doesn't mean we feel defeated either. We should continue with determination the way Prabhupada was determined no matter what happened. And surely Prabhupada says he will be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. So in spiritual life, Prabhu, just the journey of trying to execute the order of the spiritual master is itself just as important. Because when the spiritual master sees the effort and the devotional mentality, that is what pleases him. Bali Maharaj could not offer obeisances in front of Krishna as Vamandev because he was bound by the ropes. But he offered obeisances in his heart and his mind, and Vamandev accepted it. And Prabhupada writes in that purport that Krishna's mood is that he is Bhava Grahi Janardana. In other words, he is not concerned about the outcome of your efforts. He is more concerned about your devotional mentality. He is more concerned about your effort. That's why Krishna takes the essence of the devotional mentality, and the Guru does the same thing, Prabhu. Guru is not interested in outcome because outcome cannot be decided by us. Outcome is in Krishna's hands. Arjuna could not win the war without Krishna. Mayai vaite nihata purva evam. But Krishna was very pleased when Arjuna said, I will become instrument. So Guru becomes very pleased when, despite so many difficulties, so much of defects from our side, we always never lose the determination to serve his lotus feet. That is the only qualification that he's looking for, Prabhu. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Wonderful answer, and that's very consoling to me. Thank you. Hare
It is to me also.
Mahesh, you would like to ask?
Yeah, Devkinandan Prabhu, Haribol Prabhu.
Hare
So my
Krishna.
information happened under the shelter of Balram Prabhu in Minneapolis.
Jai, Hare Krishna.
So I have this same question on the Eklavya Prabhu. So when Eklavya approached for the first time Dronacharya, Dronacharya is the Acharya for Aryans, right? Like for Kurus and Pandavas, they are civilized people, and their wavelength matches to the wavelength of the thought process of people. But please correct my understanding, Prabhu, here. So Eklavya might be a person from tribe, right? Nishada tribe or something. He may not have the same understanding before he goes to the Acharya when he said he might be very passionate about learning the art of archery and might have been driven by jealous and envy to overcome Arjuna. Wouldn't have made sense for Dronacharya to help him understand, kind of give him a checklist of what he needs to overcome before he can accept him as a disciple, rather than just saying, okay, you give up archery, which has actually made him more passionate and maybe more jealous or envious to overcome, and that's why he constructed the statue and proceeded with what he wanted to do rather than following the instruction of Dronacharya. So,
Very
wanted to understand.
very nice question, bro. Very practical question. Um, the good news in our movement is that today, when you approach a spiritual master in ISKCON, and if you say, Maharaj, I want to surrender to you, please tell me what I should do, you can be assured that the spiritual masters in ISKCON will sit down with you and spend time with you and tell you, well, these are things that you need to do as you want to make advancement. And this we owe to Srila Prabhupada, because Prabhupada, made devotional service so much more accessible. He made it so much more accessible. He started the mood of hearing his disciples. He was very proactive about their problems. If someone was sick, if someone had issues, Prabhupada was very kind, very gentle, very loving, you see. So that mood, I'm very glad to tell you, is very much in our movement today. That's why if you approach any spiritual master today, our experience is that, they take so much time despite their hectic schedules to always email back to you, write to you, understand your problems, understand your background, and then, like you said, they even give you a checklist. My spiritual master used to do that every time. He was at the junction of my life at every moment. When my children were going to be born, he was there telling us what mood we should have. When they were born, he was telling us, how we should be as parents. So spiritual master is like that. He's very engaging. He's at the junction of every life, you see. But Mahabharat, is such a, it's a time and circumstance that was very different. And at that time, you're right. The Nishada princes, were not as refined in one sense as perhaps the Kauravas and the Pandavas. But it's also important that the Mahabharata tells us that even though the Kuru princes, the Kauravas like Drona, like Duryodhan and all, were also learning from Dronacharya the art of warfare, Dronacharya recognized that while they could learn the art, their mood, will one day become a source of destruction to the dynasty. I'm bringing that up because even though we may be born into what we call or think is refined living, until we act on it, it's very difficult to justify it. The Nishada prince, Dronacharya, felt that he would grow to become so envious and powerful that he would become another additional burden to already a problematic situation which was going to come with the Kuru race. And therefore, Dronacharya, in his maturity, thought that if this Nishada prince can at least pass my first test of actually just trying to hear me, he may then go on to have potential. In the Mahabharata, Krishna also has a hand in all these situations. And Krishna wanted to protect Arjuna very much, because while Krishna is impartial to everyone, like a kind father, when he sees a son who's growing very well, the father makes sure that the son is growing very well also. So when you put all these things down, Prabhu, it's important to appreciate that Dronacharya put this forward because it stands for a particular principle. Sometimes, a principle is established and then we have a spectrum. In this case, the principle is that when we are interested in approaching a spiritual master, we will not be ready until we understand what is the purpose of approaching the person. If the purpose of approaching that person is actually for our own gratification, Actually, it's better for us if the person rejects us at that point, because we don't offend the Lord and we don't offend the spiritual master. It's what we call in material world tough love, you know. Sometimes, you know, the father says, don't eat ice cream. And at that moment, you know, he's not going to go into the reasons why you don't eat ice cream. He just says, stop it first. Then the child becomes very unhappy. And at the right time, the spiritual master says, now you know why I told you not to eat ice cream. So it's a principle, Prabhu. Could have been done differently. I'm glad that in ISKCON we do it differently, but it's a principle. Is that helpful, Mahesh Prabhu?
Very well, thanks. Very nice answer.
Good question. Very good question. Yes, Prabhu.
Jai Drupadi Mataji, you have a question?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wonderful, wonderful class, eye-opener class, Prabhuji. Yeah. Prabhuji, I have follow-up question Dheeraj Prabhu asked, right? And like you answered the doubts, and so Prabhuji, sometimes doubts come, most of the time doubts comes. So like we cannot ask from a spiritual master immediately, and suddenly answer comes from scriptures or from senior devotees. So how should we consider that it's from these answers coming from a spiritual master, or how should we take that?
Very nice point. It's very clear that when we have surrendered to the spiritual master will find any way and means by praying very hard to Krishna that somehow or another our spiritual life will be protected. Because Krishna is Chaitya Guru in the heart, and because the spiritual master is a pure devotee of the Lord, Krishna will make sure that all Krishna's paraphernalia, through the agency of his instructions in the scriptures, through the agency of devotees, they will all become instruments in the hands of the spiritual master's prayers and well wishes for his disciple. That somehow or another, when we become surrendered, Krishna opens up an entire kingdom for assistance of that devotee. That is why, through the mercy of the spiritual master, sometimes, you know, we may not even be able to physically ask him. But if we pray very hard that we have a doubt, our experience is that when we open Bhagavatam, we read Bhagavatam, the answers come. Our experience also is that when we pray very hard to our spiritual master because we have a doubt, and we take nice sadhu sangha of the devotees, through the devotees, our spiritual master's mercies manifest. Spiritual master is also a principle, Mataji. Guru is also a principle. In other words, the Guru is not only a personal representative, but Prabhupada often says that Guru's instructions also comes through Siksha. Siksha are the instructions of all the other well-wishers devotees who are in our community. For example, if you're in the community that you are now, you will find that just by taking like-minded and association of the devotees, their association in instructions actually gives us more strength to follow the instructions of our spiritual master. See the beautiful dynamics of how sadhu sangha will help us to follow the instructions of Guru's instructions, and how when we follow Guru's instructions, that will give us more enriching sadhu sangha. So Guru teaches us through many ways. The Guru can teach us through experiences of life. The Guru can teach us through a devotee. The Guru can teach us through sastras. That's why Guru, Sadhu, and sastras are always aligned. There will never be one that is not aligned with the other. And that is the true evidence, you know, of the authentic nature of our spiritual life. Does that help, Mataji?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
If anybody else has any other question. In the meantime, I have one question, Prabhuji. My question is that sometimes one may feel that if I take shelter of a spiritual master, I may disrespect, familiarity may seep in, and so that doesn't happen, let me better not take shelter. That is the safest way of not getting into this position where I may commit aparadh to a spiritual master. So in that case, what would you tell?
It's a very important question, Prabhu. I'm glad you brought it up. I think it's something that we should always keep in mind. this mind, the nature of the mind, Bhagavatam tells us, is actually to find ways and means for us not to take up spiritual life. It's not the problem of the mind, it's just the nature of the mind. Nature of the mind is, it can either be a friend if it's controlled, or if it's uncontrolled, it'll give you all the favorable arguments why you should not chant, why you should not read, why you should not come for programs, and why you should not surrender. Mind has very, very good favorable arguments. Sometimes you want to wake up for Mangalarti in the morning and you work very late. Just before you sleep, the mind will tell you, if you wake up early in the morning, you only have 3 hours sleep. Then what will happen? Next day you'll fall sick. And when you fall sick next day, the following day's Mangalarti you will miss. So it'll tell you to miss the first day's Mangalarti so that you can survive for the second day's Mangalarti. But the second day Mangalarti, before you wake up, the mind will tell you, well, yesterday you didn't get enough sleep, so you sleep one more day. So the nature of the mind is the biggest barrier between us and surrender to the spiritual master. Yes, if we take a vow, and if we don't follow the vow, naturally, and that is common sense in this world. If you make a commitment to someone that you will be chaste to them, then it is our duty to be chaste to them. But the cost of not surrendering far outweighs the cost of surrendering and then struggling to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Why? Because life is always going to be a struggle. But it is better we struggle for Krishna and Guru than if we struggle for Maya. This is a very rational way to understand why we should surrender. Because if we are on our own, and if we say that I will wait for the day when I'm perfect and then I become a disciple, the very nature of a disciple is that the disciple is not perfect. That is why we are surrendering. If we are so perfect, then why must we surrender? If we say we'll never be perfect. There was a man who said when the waves of the shores were coming and some boys were playing and swimming, then they came to the man and asked him, "Uncle, why are you sitting there?" He said, "I want to go inside, but I'm waiting for the waves to stop." And the boys laughed and said, "The waves will never stop, and therefore you will never take a bath." So there will never be a good day. There will never be a perfect day. There will never be a time. Let that time be in the hands of Krishna. Krishna knows. When we start wanting to surrender to the Lord, actually Krishna takes over. And as Chaitya Guru, if we desire to surrender to Krishna, he will direct us to a Guru. When Krishna is directing us to Guru, do you not think, all of us, do we not think that he will do it by protecting our consciousness? Therefore, Ramchandra Prabhu's point is very important. Subtly, when we say that we do not want to surrender to the spiritual master for all these reasons, actually subtly what we are telling Krishna is that I am not interested in devotional service. That's what we are telling Krishna. But we are saying it in a very sophisticated way. But it is very important that we first of all accept that we are not qualified. Only those who are not qualified are prepared to surrender. If you say, I'm not prepared to surrender because I must become qualified, then we've missed the point of surrender. Does that help, Ramchandra Prabhu?
Yes, very much. Very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Vijay Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Jai Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Wonderful. My God, this is, I'm getting goosebumps to every answers you're giving. I'll just give you a heads up as to our family. We've been supported so much by this current congregation. We had our DTs last year being installed, and my chanting is doing good. 4 regulated principles are followed religiously. Families getting into it. But here I am got my zoned into a very comfort level where I have very good Shiksha Gurus. Now, we never covered Shiksha Guru in this particular conversation or the lecture. And if you look at the Guru Maharajas available, the number of Guru Maharajas to the number of devotees available, that means the average Guru Maharajas are many devotees. So, when you say that you can reach your Guru Maharaj and talk to him at that given date and time when you got initiated or you're getting to become a better devotee, today the probability of someone who's not got initiated and for us to become closer to a Guru Maharaj, that possibility is getting lesser with time. Do you see that happening? And if I am depending more on my Siksha Gurus, then my relationship to my Diksha Guru could get more further away. So that is one big struggle, personally. So what's your take from your point of view, Prabhu?
It's a very good point, Prabhu. There are several important points that you have raised. The first important point is, whenever we want to surrender to a spiritual master, as in surrender in terms of Diksha, Prabhupada very often stated in many parts of his lectures and purports that actually Guru comes to us in both Siksha and Diksha. The Siksha principle is as important as the Diksha. Why? Because when we take initiation from spiritual master, that initiation process is Diksha, but then the Diksha spiritual master will give us instructions, and that instruction is Siksha. So as a rule, the Diksha Guru will also be a Siksha Guru. But the beauty of our Krishna consciousness movement is that you may have one father, but you have many uncles also, right? Okay. So you have a father, but you have many uncles. Maybe father, is a bit busy somewhere, he's working hard, but you have uncles, and the uncles come over and they tell you, they explain this and explain that. Now, when uncles tell you some things, what's very important is uncles should tell you what father would tell you. If uncles tell you and father says something else, then, your house becomes Mahabharat. It becomes a bit tricky. So the first important thing of Siksha is we should surround ourselves with Sikshas which powerfully encourage us to hear our Diksha. That is a very important role of Siksha Gurus in a temple or congregation community. That everyone helps everyone to serve the instructions of their spiritual master. And in their difficulties, to help them adjust, find ways, in which they can follow the instructions. So if that platform of alignment is there, the Siksha and Diksha principle works very harmoniously together. Then sometimes we may ask, what's the value of Diksha then? Diksha is like the father, Prabhu. No matter how many uncles we have, at the end of the day, we can only have one father, right? For good or for bad, you have one father. And at the end of the day, no matter how many uncles tell you anything, and I know, father will always be father. Mother will always be mother. No one can replace our father and no one can replace our mother. So that loyalty of love for the devotee whom we surrender to is always very important. But at the same time, the Siksha that everyone else gives us to help us realize the instructions of that Diksha becomes very important. So that's one point I wanted to make. The second point that you're saying is also very practical. There are many spiritual masters with thousands of disciples. And there are many disciples who have different understandings and requirements on how to advance in spiritual life. You may be the kind of personality, Prabhu, where you feel that to advance in devotional service, I really need to connect with a spiritual master who has more time, who can, email me, I email him back, I can call him. Yes, he has a few hundred disciples or he has 1,000 disciples, but he can manage it, So you may be the kind of devotee who needs that one-to-one time, that's needed. So as leaders, like in Singapore, when devotees come to me and say they're inspired, they want to take up initiation, the first thing I want to understand is, what kind of devotees are they? Are they the kind who require more time with their spiritual master? They need more instructions, for example. Or some devotees say that just by hearing his instructions on lectures, by reading, by seeing him once a year in the yatra, or by talking to him, from time to time, that is sufficient because I know the spiritual master is working through Sikshas and working through devotees. So it depends on the kind of mentality a disciple to be has. And based on that mentality, I tend to then, like in Singapore, we have 19 Guru's disciples in our congregation. So we have gurus across, all over the world. We have gurus with 100 disciples. We have gurus with thousands of disciples. But the important thing is a commonality of understanding between the disciple and spiritual master. If the disciple feels, for example, language-wise, he is more aligned with a guru who can speak a particular language, it becomes a practical consideration. And we try and introduce them to hear different gurus as much as possible, hear everyone, become inspired by a few devotees, and we try and guide them and support them in that way. So what you brought up is very dynamic and important. We need to understand how you feel, who you are, what are your needs? And it's true, in ISKCON, we have thousands and thousands of devotees, but we don't have enough gurus. But I'll tell you one thing, the good news is, right, the GBC, the many initiatives that the GBC has brought up is that there is always what we call a Guru Services Committee. And there's always, at this moment, there are always devotees who are stepping up and taking on this service as Guru. The only reason why we don't have a Guru per disciple is also because Prabhupada did not want to compromise on the standard of purity. And it's very important for us to do that too. The day we compromise on the qualities set by Prabhupada, then on paper, we will look like we are taking care of everyone. But then, we'll become a supermarket, Prabhu, and that becomes very difficult. So I hope these answers give you some, indication.
Absolutely. And then again, I'm getting spoiled with very good Shiksha Gurus too. So
that's good news.
That's my comfort zone, right?
That's good news. See, having Siksha Gurus and being spoiled by them is very good. But I'm sure the Siksha Gurus are giving you so much nice association. But at some point or the other, Prabhu, every good Siksha Guru will tell you, Prabhu, we are all here. But if you really want to become serious, you have to take that plunge.
Agree.
Because the Siksha Gurus also have taken the plunge. And that's why they are such good Siksha Gurus to you.
True. Bro, I'm very fortunate and I'm very thankful to
I'll just share with you something my spiritual master used to humorously tell me. He said, Devki, before you get married, sometimes you may have to see so many ladies, the ladies see so many men, option number 1, number 2, number 3. After you get married, nobody sits in the night of the marriage and say, oh my God, I should have gone to option number 1. I should have taken option number 6. No, because a vow, Prabhu, will fix our mind and our senses in such a way that they understand they have someone that they are accountable to, someone that they will always have to answer to. Imagine if you were in a corporate place and you had no one to answer to, your work performance will at best be mediocre. But if you have someone that you can always answer to, your work performance is always assessed, it is advised, and it is constantly improved. That is the principle of spiritual master.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. I appreciate your time and your efforts.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any last questions from anybody? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
It's again, as you mentioned, it's a work day for you. And just one last thing, maybe for the benefit of all the devotees here, at least I don't know. Would you mind sharing how you came to Krishna consciousness? How you met the devotees and joined us?
Sure. I'll make it short. I don't want to hold back everyone. I was very lucky very fortunate because since I was young, I had this interest in spiritual life. So what happened was I was searching. I would read a lot of books on Hinduism, and I wanted to know the purpose of living. I saw one thing when I was young. Everybody was very happy, but the happiness was short-lived. So I thought, why is it, that no one can be happy forever? So I thought there must be something in our life where we can find happiness which will last longer. So that was the start of my search. And then I like to read. So I read many books on Hinduism, and I became a very Pakka Mayavadi, actually, in that sense. I was very much studying the impersonalist philosophy. I was studying Aurobindo. I had a lot of association of the Swamijis from Ramakrishna Mission because it was just across my school. And I used to go there very often. I took that sadhu sangha. Then one day I was actually in a bookshop, And I saw this book by Srila Prabhupada, Science of Self-Realization. It was a second-hand book and it was just selling for 50 cents. And I thought, why not, you know? Prabhupada's face was there and he looked really attractive. So I picked up the book and I started reading. And I thought, this is amazing. Because while I was performing spiritual activities, I had yet to find answers to many questions I had. And I also wanted to find a spiritual life where from morning till night, I would know exactly what to do. And I found when I started reading Prabhupada's books, that Prabhupada could explain everything very rationally. And I guess when you're young, you ask why? And parents say, don't ask so many questions, just do it. And it wasn't enough for me. So then I started looking around. And then what happened was I couldn't find anyone here. I couldn't find books. And one day my mother was walking on the street when suddenly one lady stopped her and said, do you have children? She said, yes. Do your children like Hinduism, books, culture? And she said, yes. And she said, I have these beautiful books which are like the encyclopedia for Hinduism. So my mother invited her home and she took out this catalog of Bhaktivedanta library books. And she said, this Srimad Bhagavatam is the encyclopedia for Hinduism. And I was so excited because I thought this is it. And my mother was so kind, you know, that she bought the whole book. It was very expensive at that time. We couldn't afford it so much, but she bought it. And when Bhagavatam came back, this lady only told me one thing. This used to be the small books, Prabhu. So there were many of them, 48, the initial one. She said every day after school, because this was in 1983. So I was 13 years old then. So she said, very simple. Every day when you come back after school, take a bath, take out Bhagavatam. The first canto is Krishna's Krishna's feet. And the last time there was only up to 10 canto, that's Krishna's face. So every day you just pick up the book, you read one shloka. I told her, I can't understand everything. She said, doesn't matter. You have faith in Krishna and Krishna will give you all knowledge. Just have faith and read. Even if you don't understand, you just read. He will make you understand. And that's how I started my journey. And after reading it, then suddenly I found these books were actually printed in Singapore at that time, of all places in the world, Prabhu. And so I contacted the secretary, got in touch with the temple, and the journey of spiritual life began. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Okay, Jai.
Jai.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also
Prabhu.
believe you're very much involved in Singapore and also in Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I do move around a few temples, but not so much Indonesia, Prabhuji. But I do go to other countries wherever, there is some preaching opportunities.
So we hope in the future, anybody visiting that part of the world can contact Prabhuji and
Of course.
connect you with devotees.
We are more than welcome. Please come. Singapore is a desert. We need all the devotees here. So please don't hesitate and please come.
Prabhuji, this is Dheeraj again. So Prabhuji, in Singapore, the temple, Geylang Temple or?
No, we are known as Gita Reading Society. GRS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're known as Gita Reading Society.
Because I was there in Singapore in 2011. So
Right.
I used to visit that temple in the Geylang.
Yeah. No, actually it's known as Gita Reading Society. So that's how we are known here in Singapore. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, one devotee has raised their hand. One last
Oh, yes. Okay, sure.
question.
One
Is
last
that
one,
okay?
maybe? Yeah. Then
Yeah,
I can go.
okay.
Yes.
Sure. Please go ahead. Prabhu Sudha Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Dandavad.
I have a question on your last relation, what you shared, you were comparing, you were reading the book of Ramakrishna Paramahansa Trust, and then you read the Prabhupada's book and you joined this ISKCON. So I want to know, what was the deciding factor? What was not there in that Ramakrishna Paramahansa book and what was there in the Srila Prabhupada's book?
Very nice question. Actually, I'm very grateful to Ramakrishna Mission because we should never condemn or criticize any other different pathways in spiritual life. This is a very important point. As devotees, we see good in everyone, and everyone is somehow searching for something. Sometimes it's our constitutional nature, Mataji. My nature was that I needed to do something very practical in terms of service. And in Ramakrishna Mission, there were opportunities for service, but there were not so much. And sometimes, after reading philosophy, I found that I could not put it into practice. In Krishna consciousness, for example, I found chanting very helpful because I tried to meditate, but most of the time I fell asleep. But when I started chanting Krishna's name, I found that, hey, by chanting, I can remember Krishna, and somehow chanting gave me so much peace. So before exams, I chanted. After exams, I chanted. In the beginning, my chanting was, not very good. It was all motivated. In fact, my mother would know when my exams came based on my chanting. Just before the exam came, chanting increased. Then she knew I had exams. And then after a while, chanting became very low. She knew I was not doing it well. But then when chanting came, she knew, now results are coming. So my point is that even in the beginning, Krishna consciousness I found so delightful because it has so much variety. If you like to take prasadam, this is the place for you. If you like to dance, you can dance as much as you want. If you like music, kirtan, bhajans, no end to it. If you like philosophy, there's no end to philosophy, and the philosophy is very rational. Anyone intelligent even can appreciate our philosophy. If you like to wear nice dhoti kurta, you can wear it also. If you like to be traditional, you can be traditional. If you like to be forward-looking and have an international reach, you can also do that. You can worship Krishna through deities, wonderful Radha Shyam Sundar deities we saw. And the beauty of Krishna consciousness is, whatever that we do, we just need to put Krishna in the center. That is the beauty of it. Therefore, a child can become Krishna conscious, a mother can become Krishna conscious, a husband, wife can become Krishna conscious, across all levels of strata, living, no barriers to become Krishna conscious. You can become sannyasi and don saffron robe, become Krishna conscious. You can be grasta, wherever you are. And from that situation, sthane stitaha, just become situated where you are, and you can execute bhakti. So that for me, is something that is just wonderful.
Thank you.
I hope that helps, Mataji. Huh? Yeah.
Absolutely, this helps. The question I asked because one of my very dear uncle, they are strongly following the Ramakrishna Paramahansa, and they are one of my cousin become the saint there. So he took the initiation in that. So they are very nice. They are following everything, but sometimes I feel compassion for that. What is good for them. So this is really going to help me to just explain them, talk to them, explain the difference and all. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Ramchandra Prabhu. Thank you to all the devotees. I wish you all the best in your Krishna consciousness. One thing I pray that always remember, the real test of devotional service, right, is to always smile. Be happy and smile in devotional service. Our life is very short and it's not going to come back. This 1 hour has gone. It's not coming back. How long are we going to wait until we understand that one day we must take the plunge? How long we're going to sit outside and be a spectator? You're all lucky. As Vijay Prabhu pointed out, you have so much of Siksha. The right use of the Siksha is to become fixed. That is the right use of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also want to thank